There's a new problem emerging with Disney live-action remakes. My 4-year-old niece asked if we could walk out of a screening of Disney's live-action The Little Mermaid. And I'll just have you know, we didn't only walk out of the movie because parts of it were too scary for her. We walked out because the problem with Disney live-action remakes was so prevalent in The Little Mermaid, my niece couldn't even stand to watch the movie. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm actually gonna go back to the theater to see it because I wanna see that movie. And yet, I recognize the problem. In this video essay, we'll talk about the history of Disney live-action remakes, how they evolved into what they are today, and how that evolution has led to some problems. The Walt Disney Animation Studios has produced timeless bangers throughout the years, and Hollywood loves to remake old bangers. Disney made 4 live-action remakes before the live-action explosion in the 2010s. 2 were the Jungle Book remakes, which weren't exclusively based on the 1967 film, and 2 were the 101 Dalmatian movies with Glenn Close. And the only thing I remember about this series is rewinding a VHS tape so I could repeatedly listen to the Bow Wow song on the 102 Dalmatians trailer over and over and over. The first Disney live-action remake of the modern era was 2010's Alice in Wonderland. Tim Burton took a lot of creative liberties with this film. While it was based on the 1951 animated movie, it was also extremely different. It was its own product with its own tone and its own character design. Everything was kind of loosely inspired by the original. And Alice in Wonderland made bank. $1.025 billion to be exact. Disney then tried The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which was very loosely based on the Mickey Mouse cartoon of the same name. Mickey wasn't even in it. It didn't go great. Maleficent came next in 2014, a retelling of 1959 Sleeping Beauty from Maleficent's perspective. Just like Alice in Wonderland, it made bank. I assume at this time that Disney figured out that as long as they stayed kind of close to the animated movie, it didn't stray off too far from the path, they could make a lot of money from live action remakes. And eventually the refinement of all of that evolved into the issue we now have with The Little Mermaid. Cinderella came next in 2015. It was closer to the animated film than the other remakes, and it made bippity boppity bank. The Jungle Book came next in 2016. It was a lot closer to the animated film than the 1994 movie, and that Jungle Book made so much money. A month and a half after the success of the Jungle Book came Alice in Wonderland's sequel, Through the Looking Glass. As the sequel to the 2010 live-action Alice in Wonderland, the plot was very different from anything found in the animated Alice in Wonderland. It was very much its own thing, a continuation of whatever the 2010 thing was. And this movie, in fact, did not make bank. It actually lost the studio $70 million. From the general looks of things at that time, movies that stuck closer to the source material tended to do better than movies that deviated. I can only assume Disney was like, maybe with these live action remakes, audiences don't actually want us to tell new stories inspired by the characters. What if they want us to tell the same stories, but again? Enter 2017's Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast was essentially a live-action remake of 1991's animated Beauty and the Beast. Like a remake, like the same movie. Same song, same characters, same plot. Disney literally remade an animated movie to an extent they never had before. And Beauty and the Beast made Beauty in the bank. Clearly, Disney saw this strategy as lucrative. So what do you do with a winning strategy? You keep doing it, obviously. In 2019, we encounter a problem that made 2023's Little Mermaid uncomfortable. After Beauty and the Beast, the expectation was kind of set up that live action remakes of Disney movies didn't have to be super creative. They could literally be like the same movie, but real. The problem is, animated films don't always translate well into live action. The animated version can be whimsical and interpretive or whatever, but the live action version needs to feel like it could exist in a real world. Because if it's not truly live action and it's kind of cartoonish in a real world, then why does the live action version exist? Foreshadowing. 2019, Aladdin comes out. Yeah, I skipped Dumbo, but Dumbo's irrelevant. 1992's animated Aladdin film features people, a genie, a talking bird, a flying carpet. Aladdin is an abstract interpretation of our real life. Nothing looked out of the ordinary when Aladdin was interpreted into a live-action Disney remake. A flying carpet and a humanoid genie are not that much of a stretch, but we run into problems with The Lion King. With animation, The Lion King featured cute little lions that were so adorable, and come on, look at that. You have to get a plushie of that. I mean, I did when I was a kid. This was my Simba. I loved this thing. But when you want cute talking lions and you want to make them live action, it looks like this. Yeah. When the live action character designs weren't aiming for realism, everything looked fine. But now that they're trying to make animated movies look, real, you get lions giving dramatic speeches, lying down mid-speech, and licking themselves mid-speech because it's realistic. However, The Lion King was the most profitable Disney live action remake of all time. Blah, blah, blah. Mulan and Cruella were PG-13, blah, blah, blah. They didn't really feature anything that looked that strange. And now we arrive at The Little Mermaid, finally. We've also arrived at the part of the video where I awkwardly beg for likes, because the higher the view to like ratio, the more people YouTube shows this video to, and I have 151 subscribers, so I would appreciate it. Anyway, the Little Mermaid animated film is extremely whimsical, but Disney live action isn't exactly going for whimsy anymore. It's recreating the animated movies, but in real life. But if we were going to make this look like real life, do you know what an ocean looks like in real life? In animation, Sebastian and Flounder look fine. Kids would get a stuffed animal of those. But the animals Sebastian and Flounder are based off of aren't really that attractive, you know what I'm saying? A real lion looks okay in a live action, but a fish and a crab. A fish and a crab. When the promotional images for Sebastian and Flounder were first released, the internet had a lot to say about it. I'd say they did the best they could given the limitations of trying to be, realistic. As an older person, I can look at these characters in the movie and think, that looks kind of weird, but then I'll continue to watch the movie because I understand what they are trying to achieve creatively. But for a small child, life does not always work that way. I talked a lot about this in a different video on my channel, Why People Like Movies, and it's actually the worst video on my channel. But your brain interprets a movie at first as being real, but your prefrontal cortex determines what's real and what's fake. So you see a movie and your prefrontal cortex is like, oh, that's not real. But little kids have less developed prefrontal cortexes than older kids and adults. So if something looks weird to a little kid, they might not hold back. A major reason my niece wanted to leave The Little Mermaid, she told me afterwards, was because she couldn't stand looking at Sebastian and Flounder. It didn't matter in the movie that Sebastian and Flounder were supposed to be friendly. She didn't want to see them at all, and anytime they were on the screen, she tensed up. I've actually heard this has been happening frequently with Little Mermaid screenings. I'm not an expert, but when you have a Disney movie that's supposed to target the entire family, and a lot of little kids are freaked out by some of the characters, I think that's a design fail. This isn't gonna sell toys. You want this as a plushie? After we walked out of The Little Mermaid, my niece told me she didn't like the movie for a few reasons, and she's really good at expressing herself for a 4-year-old, believe it or not. There was not one scene in particular that made her want to leave The Little Mermaid. My niece complained the movie was too dark, and that made her really uncomfortable. In the cartoon The Little Mermaid, it's happy, it's colorful, and it's unrealistic for the ocean to look like that, but come on, it was a cartoon. In movies like The Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, real locations that the animated movies are based off of are actually visually appealing too. It's cool to see a savanna, it's cool to see a French castle, but under the ocean, it's not very bright down there. Filmmakers basically made the ocean in The Little Mermaid look dark and murky. The new Peter Pan and Wendy suffered the same environment problem. Did they nail the dark and dreary London? Absolutely. But there's nowhere on Earth as colorful as Neverland. So, translated into real life, Neverland and Peter Pan and Wendy wasn't appealing at all. And then there's Ursula. In the cartoon, her design is very exaggerated and very fun, and Melissa McCarthy, however, is supposed to be an octopus person in an attempt to be realistic. So, in the live action movie where you have Ursula and all her tentacles and she's eating a fish alive, that did not go over well for, my niece. The real life vibe is very different from a cartoon. The Little Mermaid animated film is rated G, but the Little Mermaid live action film is rated PG. I have an entire video on my channel about the MPA rating system. It's a little inappropriate as I talk about the X rating on there, if you know what I'm saying. And this movie is rated PG, so that is something to consider. But these Disney live action movies, while often recreations of the animated movies, aren't really recreations. Even though the movie might feel like the same story, the approach is completely different. Whereas The Little Mermaid can be done as a G-rated movie in animation, a real-life version of the same events, by nature, is a bit more intense. In an animated movie, it's like, oh no, people are jumping over the side and whatever. But in a live action movie, it's like people are jumping over the side, you know what I mean? So let me be honest here. Do I think the fraction, the sliver of The Little Mermaid that I saw was bad? Absolutely not. In fact, I will be going again to see the movie, the whole movie. But given that I was taking my niece, I had to put her needs before mine, even if my needs were to watch The Little Mermaid. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, you may enjoy this next video.